Probably the two most common song forms in the history of jazz are 12-bar blues and the rhythm changes. They're both instantly recognizable chord progressions that you've certainly heard countless times in your life. But what happens if you try to combine the two forms? Well, John Coltrane did it on the track Locomotion from his legendary 1958 album Blue Train. Wait, maybe I should back up. What are 12-bar blues and the rhythm changes? Time for the music theory hat. 12-bar blues, as the name suggests, is a 12-bar form. It consists of 3 4-bar phrases. There are a ton of variations on the basic structure, but it's mostly about alternating between the tonic and the fourth. In its simplest form, it looks like this. Phrase 1, 4 bars of the tonic. Phrase 2, 2 bars of the 4 chord, followed by 2 more bars of the tonic. Phrase 3, starts on the 5, then moves to the 4 to resolve as a plagal cadence, aka the Amen cadence. Typically, all of these chords are played as dominant seventh chords, meaning a major triad with a flat seventh on top. Some common variations include playing the 4 chord on bar 2, playing the minor 6 chord on bar 8, and throwing in some 2-5-1 turnarounds at the end. You can also experiment with chord substitutions. And there are also some variants in the length of the form. One of my favorites is Herbie Hancock's Wiggle Waggle from the album Fat Albert Rotunda, which is an 8-bar form, but still definitely feels like a blues. I recorded my own version of that tune for my Northern Daydream 3 Future Proof Past album a few years ago. Link in the description. A lot of funk music in the 70s kept the essence of blues in a really stripped-down form, with static vamps that alternate between the 1 and 4 chord, or that just sit on the 1 for most of the tune and then go to the 4 for the bridge. So that's 12-bar blues, instantly familiar and easy to solo over. It's no wonder it's the most common form in jazz. I learned and grew comfortable with the 12-bar blues while playing saxophone in my high school jazz band, but what about the rhythm changes? I heard the name floating around a lot, but no one ever really explained to me what it was, beyond simply where it came from, the George and Ira Gershwin tune, I Got Rhythm. Jazz music has always borrowed and adapted popular songs. From the 1930s to the 1950s, that often meant show tunes. The Gershwin songbook spawned countless jazz arrangements. I Got Rhythm was an especially popular choice, and jazz musicians became well-versed in soloing over its rapid-fire chord changes. But here's the thing. Copyright. We talk a lot about copyright on YouTube these days, especially in light of the situation with LLM training, but copyright has been an issue as long as there have been commercial recordings. The Gershwin estate is still highly protective of the copyright on these songs, even though I Got Rhythm finally entered the public domain in the United States at the beginning of this year. Which means it was not public domain when jazz musicians were playing it the most, back in the bebop and early hard bop eras of jazz. The catch is, you can copyright the melody and lyrics of a song, but you can't copyright a chord progression. Yes, in recent years there have been high-profile cases, like when the Marvin Gaye estate sued Robin Thicke over the stylistic similarity of his song Blurred Lines to the Marvin Gaye tune Gotta Give It Up. But still, like I said, you can't copyright a chord progression. So when these jazz musicians went into the studio to record albums, they wanted to solo over the familiar rhythm changes, but they didn't want to pay royalties to George Gershwin, so they just wrote new melodies to play over those changes. That's called a contrafact. Here's one contrafact of I Got Rhythm that you may recognize.
Flintstones, meet the Flintstones, they're the modern Stone Age family.
Okay, that's the history of rhythm changes, but what are the rhythm changes? I Got Rhythm is built on a 32-bar AABA form. That doesn't mean A chords and B chords, it's the structure. There's an 8-bar pattern, the A section, where the chords change generally every 2 beats, i.e. twice per measure. The next 8 bars are a repeat of the A section, sometimes with a slight change at the end to lead into the B section. The B section is also 8 bars, but the speed of the chord changes slows way down, with 4 chords going around the circle of fifths, 2 bars each.
Someday, maybe Fred will win the fight. Then that chap will stay out for the night.
Just as with the 12-bar blues, there are lots of options for creating variations on the basic rhythm changes form, but keeping it fairly true to the original, it looks like this. The A section consists of a 2-bar phrase, 1-6-2-5, played twice, followed by a 4-bar phrase that feels a bit like a blues in miniature, with a bar on the root, a bar on the 4, and then a bar with the 1 and the 5, ending on the 1. Of course, there are a few little variations thrown in there, adding the 7th halfway through bar 5, going from the major 4 to the minor 4 in bar 6, or sometimes a diminished chord with a tritone root relative to the tonic, etc. The B section, as I mentioned, consists of 4 chords over 8 bars, 2 bars each. Relative to the tonic of the A section, it's the 3, 6, 2, and 5, but since they're all dominant chords, it's really the 5 of 6 to the 5 of 2 to the 5 of 5 to the 5, which leads back to the tonic for one more statement of the A section. John Coltrane was a seeker. Spiritually and musically, he spent the last decade of his life, from 1957 to 1967, constantly seeking out new ways to express the abundance of ideas in his head. In fact, one of those new ways he invented was so striking that it's named after him, the Coltrane changes, aka giant steps. But you've probably already seen a few memes about that. A couple of years before he wrote Giant Steps, with its gnarly, tonally ambiguous chord progression, Coltrane conducted another experiment, merging the 12-bar blues with the rhythm changes. That's Locomotion, the track from Blue Train that I mentioned at the beginning of this video. I've listened to Blue Train countless times, but I never really picked up on the form of this tune. It almost feels like a bit of a throwaway track in the context of an album with classics like the title track or A Moment's Notice, and it's easy to overlook the fact that it's not just a straightforward 12-bar blues. John Coltrane was born on September 23, 1926. His 100th birthday would be next month, and my band, 32nd Street Jazz, is playing a Coltrane tribute show at Metronome Brewery in St. Paul on September 10th. We've already done a Coltrane tribute show before. Last year, we performed my arrangement of A Love Supreme in its entirety to celebrate the 60th anniversary of that landmark album. We'll be playing it again next month, but we didn't want the whole show to just be a repeat of last time, so we've been looking at some new charts. That's how I ended up flipping to Locomotion in the train book. I was actually just looking for a few easy charts for us to throw in, since our rehearsal time this month is severely limited. I thought, okay, here's a straight blues chart with a fairly simple head. We can probably just run this down once and be ready to go. But then I noticed, yeah, the head is fairly simple, but it's not just a straight blues chart. I put rhythm and blues in quotes in the title of this section because that's already a term for a genre and it has nothing to do with what we're talking about here. But since this form does merge rhythm changes with 12-bar blues, I think it kind of works. I haven't explicitly stated this yet, but it's key to understanding what's going on here. The form of a jazz chart has layers.
Ogres are like onions.
They stink?
Yes. No.
Oh, they make you cry.
No! Layers! Onions have layers.
At the most atomic layer, it's about the individual chords and how they flow one into the next, but there's also a larger structure. For a 12-bar blues, it's those 3 4-bar phrases. For rhythm changes, it's the 32-bar AABA form. With Locomotion, Coltrane starts with the concept of an AABA form. But what if instead of the A section being 8 bars of rapid-fire chord changes, as in I Got Rhythm, it was just a 12-bar blues? Well, first off, that's how we arrive at a 44-bar form. 3 choruses of 12-bar blues are 36 measures, plus an 8-measure B section stuck in the middle. The B section here is basically the B section of the rhythm changes, 8 bars, 4 chords, 2 bars each. But there's a twist: tritone substitutions. I talked in an earlier Music Theory Hat video about the magic properties of dominant chords. Since these chords contain a tritone between the major third and the minor seventh, you can get some interesting chromatic movement if you chain together dominant chords around the circle of fifths. In a jazz chord, the third and seventh are the notes that provide its characteristic color. But the notes can be stacked in any order. So if the roots of your chords go around the circle of fifths, you can just play the third and seventh and descend chromatically. The third of one chord steps down to the seventh of the next, then to the third of the next, etc. Somewhere along the way in their harmonic explorations, jazz musicians discovered that not only did this trick exist, but since the third and the seventh are the notes that provide a chord's color, and since in a dominant chord those notes are a tritone apart, you can actually move the root by a tritone, and it will have exactly the same third and seventh notes, just flipped. What all of this means is that anytime in a chord progression where you have this dominant root motion from 5 to 1, you can substitute the flat 2, the note a tritone away, for the 5 chord. That's tritone substitution. And that's what Coltrane's done with the B section in Locomotion. Instead of the expected progression of D7 to G7 to C7 to F7, roots moving around the circle of fifths, it's A flat 7 to G7 to G flat 7 to F7. It still feels like the rhythm changes B section, but those tritone substitutions inject some unexpected color. Honestly, and not too surprisingly, Locomotion mostly still just sounds like a 12-bar blues, because most of the time it is. But that 8-bar bridge to the rhythm changes is a welcome surprise in the middle. So maybe it wasn't an entirely successful experiment and is nothing more than a minor footnote in John Coltrane's extensive and influential catalog. Still, Coltrane achieved so much in his truncated career that even his minor footnotes are probably greater than anything I'll ever accomplish in my life. That's it for this one. Thanks for watching. You know the drill. Oh, and by the way, you can get your own Music Theory hat in my shop. That's linked down below.